it's important to remember that we talked about perfectly elastic demand facing a firm. That doesn't mean that demand for the good is perfectly elastic. It just means demand facing any firm is perfectly elastic. And it's important to distinguish firms from markets. The way we do this is by thinking about the concept of residual demand. So let's focus for a minute on the concept of residual demand. Let's focus on the concept of residual demand. So let's say you have some market demand function, Q of P. It's a big Q, so that's the whole market. This is how much of a certain good you want the whole market. Then we can think of any firm's demand curve, little q of P, as being big Q of P minus the supply of all other firms, we'll call it S0 of P, minus supply of all other firms in that market. Okay? So my demand is the total demand minus what everybody else is supplying. Okay? Differentiating with respect to price, we get the dq dp, okay, equals d big Q dp minus ds0 dp. Okay, so just differentiating that. Okay, the first term is negative because supply curves we think typically slope down. We don't believe in Giffen goods. So this term is negative. Okay, but this term is positive. Okay, as the price goes up, other firms will supply more. So this is a negative minus a positive. So by definition, d little q dp is larger in absolute value. It's a bigger negative number than is d big Q dp, because you're subtracting off a positive number. Okay? We can rewrite this in terms of elasticities. If we make the assumption, if we assume, as Perloff does in the book, if we assume that all firms are identical, so little q equals big Q over n, if you assume all firms are identical, so little q equals big Q over n, so that therefore, and if we define Q0 then as n minus 1 times little q, so that's the quantity supplied by all other firms, okay? Then basically if we define S0, if we define S0, this term, as n minus 1 times little q, then you can write down a formula for residual demand that Perloff writes down, which is that the elasticity of demand facing any given firm is n times the elasticity of demand facing the market minus n minus 1 times the elasticity of supply. So the elasticity of demand facing a given firm is n times the elasticity of demand for the whole market minus n minus 1 times the elasticity of supply. So for example, a simple example is if you say have 100 firms in a market, 100 firms, if you have an elasticity of demand for that market, eta of minus 1, so it's elastic but not outrageously elastic, it's sort of an elasticity of minus 1. And if you have an elasticity of supply, nu, of 1, then that says that the elasticity facing any given firm is negative 199. Okay? So even though elasticity of the market, even though the market's only it's kind of elastic, it's not outrageously elastic, any given firm faces incredibly elastic demand. Okay? So that's the point. That's why a perfectly competitive market does not necessarily mean that people can completely substitute out of the good entirely. I still may want an Eiffel Tower statuette. The difference is I can happily substitute across firms to get one. So my elastic demand for the Eiffel Tower statuettes was elastic, but I cared as the price went up or down, but I was still interested. But if any one guy tries to charge me more, he's out of the running. Okay? So basically, the elasticity facing the firm is many, many, many multiples of the market elasticity. And that's why even a market where people have somewhat elastic demand can be perfectly competitive within the market. Okay? Questions about that?